Hello, everybody. So, as you may have noticed, Anna Hockett, my wing woman, the other blonde, she is no longer with us and she's off doing bigger, better, brighter things, and we're so happy. But that does mean that we are now officially starting season 2, episode 1 of the new podcast called Printfluencers, where I'll be interviewing leaders and industry experts and innovators in the print and mail space who are using technology, AI, robotics, really anything in the innovation spectrum to drive this industry forward and set the trends. All of our great influencers in the print and mail space. So, with that, we're just going to get right into it. And today I'm joined with Brian Stacey. He's the founder of Decision Science and the new author of the book titled Direct Mail Targeting, a Manual for Financial Services. And he is one of those people who's actually gone through the process of not only creating AI data models for the direct mail space, he's actually built a company that makes it accessible for small to medium-sized businesses to leverage this technology without breaking the bank. So, for all of those of you out there who are interested in what it actually takes, the costs, the resources to leverage data science to build out AI models, or if you're in the direct mail space, this episode is for you. It's going to be great. And with that, Brian, you told me when we were prepping for this interview that if you don't have $2 million to just light on fire right now, then you're not even ready to have the conversation around building out your own internal direct mail targeting, AI models. So, can you tell our viewers just a little bit about how you came to that conclusion and really the experience that led up to you starting Decision Science?
Absolutely, absolutely. And thanks again for having me.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
we came to this decision. It took a little bit of work to get there. And it all
Yeah.
sort of started with my very first role in financial services, where I was building these direct mail targeting models, right? And I came into a startup to build out and run a data science, data engineering, and analytics team. And along the way, we had outsourced a direct mail targeting model because the leadership of the company felt that direct mail was going to be a good channel for us, and it turned out to be. And within a very short period of time, I had built out a large team, and we had started building a new um, a new in-house direct mail model that was more fit for our clients than this one that we were using, this off-the-shelf model. And after about a couple of years there, a competitor reached out to me and said, hey, we'd love to hire you to come over and do exactly the same
We
thing,
want that. Yeah.
right? And we're willing to pay you more money. And I said, I love this song. I know all the lyrics, right?
Yeah.
And so I like to tell everybody that I packed up my stuff and moved across the street, but it was actually across town. um, and so I got there, and I hired a team and started doing the same thing. And it was, a year and a half, 2 years later, same thing happens, right? Another smaller startup reaches out and said, hey, we'd love to have you come in house. And I was talking to them, and in the early stages, before we'd sort of landed on anything, they asked me what sort of budget I would need to accomplish this task within a year. And I said, I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna have to do some math on this and figure it out and come back to you. And I sat down and said, okay, so these are the people that I need to hire. This is the data that I need to buy. Um, this is the equipment that I need. And, are we going to do it in the cloud or on prem, et cetera? And landed at this very rough number. And this is 5 years ago. So the number's gone up since then. But I landed
Yeah.
on this number of about $2 million. And I said, and I called them back and I said, if you've got a budget for year one of $2 million. Year two budget is less because I don't have to buy the equipment, right? I just have to pay salaries and data. But that
Hmm.
year one budget of $2 million is what it's going to cost. And oh, by the way, you're not going to get a result for 6 months, right?
Yeah.
And so that's when we'll be able to start mailing. That's when we'll be able to understand what it is that we can do here. And they said we absolutely cannot afford that. Um, right? What are we supposed
Makes
to
sense.
do?
Yeah.
And and so I said, look, if you can't give me $2 million, I can't help you.
Yeah.
And sort of walked away from that phone conversation. And then while having dinner with my business partner now, whom I've known for years, he and I were talking and about this bigger problem of, look, if nobody can actually afford this thing, if none of the smaller companies can afford this thing, is there a role for a company that can offer this service, can offer direct mail targeting, can offer custom modeling, can offer, sort of understanding and managing the whole process for these smaller startups in the finance space? Is there a role for that company? And we both decided that we thought that there was, and so that was the beginning of Decision Science. And so,
Okay.
we formed the company. We, tried to bootstrap it as much as possible. Didn't, tried not to borrow any money, which meant that we were working full time for other people as we were starting this thing out. But
Oh
we
yeah.
discovered along the way that there is a lot of demand, because there are a lot of people who recognize the value in direct mail, um, in the world of finance, and there's a lot of them who can't afford to do it in house. And
Yeah.
so, that's sort of exactly how we built a company. And that's actually this story, having this conversation with you and with some other podcast hosts that I've talked to lately, has really pushed me over the edge of finishing the book, because the book is sort of a how-to manual on, look, if you're running your own fintech and you want to do direct mail, how do you do it? How do you go about doing it? Where do you even start? Right. And that's sort of
Right.
what the idea for the book was.
So let's talk about that. Where do you start in all of this
So,
as a fintech?
I mean, the first question is the business case of, does direct mail make sense for us? Excuse and right, and that can be a hard question to answer, especially where you may not have ever done direct mail before, right? And so that was
Hmm.
one of the things that I tried to reiterate in most chapters was, how does this apply to solving that business case question of, should we even approach direct mail? And
Right, because it's so often when you've got your marketing team or you hear the buzzwords, wow, direct mail is so popular. It's gaining traction to, the consumers, the younger consumers out there, the Gen Zs, the millennials. We should be doing it. And you just get
right,
these directives of we should be doing it. And so,
right,
all right, maybe marketing has a budget and they're working with the printer and mail's going out, but is it actually meaningful mail and is it going to the
right.
right people?
Exactly. And it can be hard, sort of similar to that, but a different one is, the marketing team wants to do direct mail, or your sales team thinks that direct mail might help, but you have to
Yeah.
sell it to leadership, and leadership just sees the numbers, and you walk into them and you say, okay, your cost per piece all in is going to be 75 cents. Right.
Hmm.
And at first they go 75 cents, that's nothing. And then you say, but we're gonna have to mail 1 million pieces every month. And then, wait a minute, $750,000 a month is a huge spend for a single channel that's unproven, that we have no right. That's so, having something, having some case studies, having some things to fall back on and say, look, here are other companies that have done this, and here's a manual on how to accomplish exactly what we're trying to do, right? And so that was, for me, I was like, look, I can make this sort of a lighter version of what we offer. Obviously, I'm not gonna, I can't give you our models, and I can't, all that in this book, but I can tell you the things that we would tell you if you called us on the phone, right? How
Yeah.
to approach the problem, and how to convince leadership or convince marketing, whichever way you have to go, right? How to convince the person that you need to convince that this is a good channel. And it's a fantastic channel. And I targeted the book more towards financial services, because it is it's a wonderful place for targeting, right? For direct mail targeting, because the data is so rich in finance, that it's easy to target to the individual for exactly the person that you're looking for, that's going to respond, going to convert, and actually going to be, a profitable client for you.
Yeah. So you said that you're out there working, like you're gathering the data, you're working with data houses and procuring those data sets. And then tell me more about the AI models you have to run it through so that the actual, the type of consumer that you're targeting makes sense. Like how does all of that data converge?
Absolutely. So we've got, in general, we try to think of our data sources as one of two types.
Okay.
So in the world of finance, right, there are pre-screened offers of credit, and that's Fair Credit Reporting Act compliant data from a credit bureau. right? And that's, you're sort of restricted, right? You've got, 3 or 4 options there, and that's about it. And then, excuse me, you also have invitations to apply, right? And so that's the credit card offer that doesn't say that you're pre-approved. That's the one that says, we'd love to have you apply for our Discover card, and
Yeah.
and that's that one. That data is legion. It is everywhere, right? I can use anything I want for that. The problem there is the quality of data tends to not be as good because it's not as structured, it's not as rich, and it doesn't have the history that the credit bureau data have. And so we have sort of two processes, right? The pre-screen process, the data comes in, and we don't have to do very much processing to that data because it's largely already cleaned and usable for our models. The ITA process, we do a ton of processing, we do a ton of cleaning, we do a ton of sort of normalization around a bunch of things, and then they both get fed into a suite of machine learning models. So, if I could take you into the back room, into our server room, you'd see this monstrosity of a server rack, with eight servers running on it right now for this problem, plus our data servers, plus our other servers, right? But
Wow.
solving this
Hmm.
problem. So this raw data, 250 million records every 2 weeks comes in to represent basically every adult in the United States, and it gets scored through a suite of models. So if we talk about the pre-screen models, right now I think we have 14 top line models. So it's scoring 14 different ways for, some of them, there are multiple models for the same product. Some of them are different product models. Some of them are response to direct mail. Some are, can I guess at the conversion propensity for these things. We've got 2 or 3 conversion models for a couple of different products, um, and all of this gets sort of put together, and the output goes into this huge table in our data warehouse, and from there it becomes the hard part, right? So this is for us on a month to month basis.
That
The
was the
easy
easy
part.
part.
Right.
Yeah.
The easy part is just letting the machines do their job, and they produce a lot of heat, and we've got AC in that room, and it's
Yeah,
a
I
whole thing.
bet.
But from there, now we have scores, we have propensity scores for every individual in the United States. But the question is, what do you do with them? Right.
Hmm.
So, we have clients who come to us and they're like, hey, we want to offer a debt consolidation loan. Um, we we operate in this state footprint, 38, 39, whatever states. And these are our underwriting criteria. And so we have to layer in all of these restrictions. And then we say, okay, so what's your budget? What are you aiming for? Um, because by and large, the budget is the constraining factor after that, not how many records we can find that will perform. And then we sort of pick the top records that will work for that client in that state list with that creative package that we also help with. Right. If they don't have their own creative, or if we don't like their creative, we try very hard to convince them to let us build a creative package for them, because we've got a creative team in house that has done these types of offers. So if it's
Hmm.
an offer that's sort of outside of our wheelhouse, then we would say, we'll find somebody else. We use the mail house.
Yeah.
Pretty much all the mail houses these days have internal creative. Um, and so, right, and then we sort of select that list, clean that list up, and then send that off to the mail house for fulfillment. And that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's just it, and I think one thing that really struck me is your comment, the consumer you want is not always the consumer who's going to respond.
Yeah.
So how are you using, your data models, or how do you approach that problem with your clients of
So,
aligning that?
so this is funny. We talked about this the last time that we talked, and just this morning, I was in our server room because we're building on we're working on a refresh. Right, it's a constant process
Constant.
for us refreshing our models, and I had just run this latest model building exercise, and I was comparing it to some other ones, and it was just response, and I accidentally left the conversion models in, so I got a graph of the performance of conversion for response. um, and so this is why, right? I'd love to be able to show you that graph. I wish I had it, because
Oh.
you can see good performance in the response models, and the conversion models perform pretty much exactly the same as rolling dice or flipping coins. Um, and
Interesting. Okay.
the way this gets back to your question is it shows that the things that produce a good response model are not the same things that produce a good conversion model. And we have this conversation a lot with our clients, and they say this is the kind of client we want because they convert well, or our retention is good, or whatever, or we're able to typically upsell them on additional, whatever.
Sure.
For whatever reason, they come in and they say our sales team loves this type of client, and then we have to have the conversation with them that says, look, that type of client is fantastic, and we're going to get some, right? You're going to get some in the responses, but if we only target them, your response rate is going to be so low that you're not going to make any money on this deal. And
Hmm.
so you have to find a mix of, or not just a mix, but like the overlap, right? The intersection of the people who are going to respond. I'm imagining a Venn diagram in my head of
Yes, the
responders,
Venn
right?
diagram.
And converters, right? And these two circles have this little overlap, and those are the people that we're trying to target, right? And then
Hmm.
you can imagine more dimensions on this of, it's also a client who meets these other, like meets my underwriting criteria. Now I've got this, another circle, and I have to, and this is trying to narrow it down to the consumer that's going to respond um, to direct mail in general, going to respond to your offer in particular, going to respond to your offer in that type of package that you want to use, right? Because the number 10 envelope with an embossed card is much more expensive than a snap pack. Um,
Hmm.
so right, and so snap packs are easy to sell because everyone wants the cheaper option. So now I've got this, and then I have to layer in, of the people that are going to respond to all of these things, who's also more likely to convert and become a client in your product that also meets all of your criteria. And this is why, right, we get a lot of clients that come to us and say, I want to do 2 million records a month. And we run the numbers on, sort of a generic file of the whole population of the country, and we say, okay, you could do 2 million a month, but you're going to lose a lot of money. So we're recommending you do 400,000 records a month, and those 400,000 records are profitable, right? You're going to actually make a decent return on those, and we might in a few months be able to tweak up and find that you could do more or do slightly less or whatever. But we try to sell them on a smaller number, definitely the first few months, because it's once you target all these things, it gets hard to scale to the huge numbers that I think people always want. Not impossible, but it's hard when you layer in a lot of restrictions like this.
Different. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And I just think that approaching it in smaller batches like that, like smaller quantity, higher quality,
right,
and with the prices of, printing and postage, all of that is going up. Postage is, we don't even need to talk about postage. That's
right.
on its own little roller coaster ride. And so I think being able to allocate those dollars more efficiently into direct mail is so important and part of the conversation these days because I mean, I know folks out there are still doing, the spray and pray and just hoping things come together, but this marketing sort of 2.0 methodology where we're actually letting the message be and the consumer who's receiving that message be backed by data science and the data that's proven out to be, successful and not just interactions, but conversions, responses
Yeah.
and conversions.
And those cost restrictions are a reason why we talk to most of our clients about layering in a digital, right, digital timed to the mail, right? So if you build your marketing pyramid with a base of direct mail,
Hmm.
um, and provided that your mail piece is branded, right? If you're doing a stealth mail piece, then doing a digital tie-in doesn't do you any good because nobody knows your brand. But if you're
Yeah.
doing a branded mail piece and you're offering, a decent product, then hitting people with 10 or 15 impressions prior to in-home date, and then with another 30 or 40 impressions post in-home date, gives you a longer window of response on that mail piece. And I mean, we've done it a bunch of times, and every single time we've ever done it, every time it has more than paid for itself, right? I have dozens of case studies of this, and there's not a single time when that well-timed digital campaign didn't at least pay for itself, and almost always improves your results enough that you go, why wasn't I doing this in the first place?
Wow. See, I think that's incredible. And we do a little bit of that, at Rackme too, where we're orchestrating the workflows behind it so that, we know, all right, X, Y, and Z emails go out. Oh, we got to click. All right, great. Then you're sending that mail piece. And have they not responded to a couple of different mail pieces? Ooh, all right. Well, then orchestrate a phone call or a text or an email follow up. And it's just the orchestration and the customer journey. Well, the pre customer journey. It's the journey of communication to get a customer on the customer journey to interact with your brand. Um,
Exactly. And that's the best way to approach it, even better than guessing at in-home dates, right? If you can have triggers off postal scans, if you can have triggers off when it enters, when your commingler picks it up, or when your commingler actually drops it off, right? And then you can time that. You can time that out and say, okay, so I know that these are my deliveries based on these more detailed scans further down, instead of just, hey, I think I'm going to mail it next Friday, so I'm going to time out my impressions. But even that can get you a lift. The better that you're
absolutely.
able to trigger things, though, improves that lift even more.
Right. And I mean, even just in the print service providers and the implants that, I work with on the day to day, so many of them are asking, all right, we need client facing dashboards. And it's because clients are coming and saying, we need visibility. Like, we need to know when the mail's going out. We need for you guys to get back the information from the post office so I can see when things have been delivered. And it's because it's all part of this greater orchestration effort to try and get on people's radars, because right now, I mean, you and I, we both know we're so bombarded with information and communications that to stand
Right.
out is an expensive effort by brands to achieve.
It is. The point about dashboards, that's, we have a lot of the mail houses that we work with will send clients to us when they've worked with another data provider or another, data modeler, and they struggle to understand why their results are the way they are. And,
Ooh.
a lot of the mail houses that we work with know us as not just the guys that do the targeting, but also the guys that can help the client understand what it is that they're getting. And beyond that, help them project into the future on a direct mail campaign. And so we get a lot of referrals that way, right? We get a lot of mail houses that refer clients that are even our client to us and wind up being our client because they need this further understanding. um, and so we work with them on, look, this is from every mail campaign, and we track things by week.
Yeah.
um, if we dropped this mail on a Friday, I know what percentage of responses should have returned by, say, 14 days later, right? And from that, I can project out to the end of life of that mail how many responses you're going to get. And so we're able to talk apples to apples, comparing different campaigns, because I know how well they're going to perform at the end of their life, because I've seen enough mail campaigns and I've built enough models around projecting, right, direct mail response, that I can tell you usually within like 2 basis points, right? By day
That's
50, I'm
wild.
within 2 basis points of your actual end of life response. And we
Well,
talk,
you actually have a crystal ball. You've
right?
created
Yeah,
the a digital crystal ball, and you can now forecast
yeah,
out exactly
yeah.
what you should be looking at, which sounds like science fiction, but that is where we are.
you know,
Um,
sometimes it's horrible having that crystal ball, because sometimes it's our campaign, right, that we did,
oh
and it's just
no.
not working for whatever reason, and we're like, I got to tell the client that this thing's going to land at 48 basis points, and I told them it was going to hit 92. But
Mhm.
right, if the important thing there is figuring out the reason and helping them to fix it for the next campaign, so it doesn't happen again.
Right. Well, and that's the great thing about using some of these AI models. You mentioned that it takes, a month, 2 months, 3 months, where you're just sending out campaigns and you're doing your best at trying to figure out the right markets and the right message. But you need that baseline information to then be able to train the models to really hone in on what's working or not, right?
And with the speed of, like, if we use credit bureau data, the lead time on getting all those things turned around is, it's roughly about 28 days from when we start until the first mail drop, right? And so
Okay.
we're making decisions on month 3 as month 1 is going out. And
Hmm.
so, the first 2 months of mail are sort of, on faith. And it's good that we have some strong supporters out there in the partners that we work with, who will send clients to us, and the clients are like, hey, wait, I'm not ready to commit to 2 or 3 months of mail without knowing what the results are going to be. And most of our clients help us to talk them through and say, hey, it's going to work, we know it's going to work, if there are hiccups, we'll solve them very quickly. But you sort of have to do this because it takes so long to make this whole process work between the data, that timeline to get the data, and then if I mail today, right, it's really not going to be in home for 10 days because
Yeah.
nobody's using first class. Nobody wants to spend that kind of money. So you're
No.
using, right, it's standard rate postage, it's commingled, you're on a pallet with a bunch of other mail. You're lucky that it
Hmm.
goes out on the day you ask it to. Um, and roughly 10 days later is when you're going to start getting your first responses. And so week 2 is already in the mail by the time you're starting to get week 1 responses. And really week 3 is going out before you know enough about week 1 to really know anything about this campaign. And then guess what, right? You've already had to make the decisions on month 2, which is
Right.
upcoming. And so it's this
Like the
layered
train
thing.
has left the station
Yeah.
at a certain point, but I also think that's just training ourselves as, business owners, business leaders to shift about how we think about it. Your ROI is not going to be seen month 1, month 2, month 3, but if you're looking at the ROI of this investment over a year, then maybe those short-term losses that you had to sustain in months 1 through 3, you're not even going to remember those at the end of the day once you see the returns you're getting a year from now. So
Exactly. Exactly.
it's
And
painful, but you got to do it.
it is, and that glacial pace is hard for a lot of people to understand in today's
It
world.
is, yeah.
Everything's instantaneous, and
Hmm.
so much of the marketing that we see is online because we spend all of our times online these days, and so everyone sort of expects this instantaneous results. And
Yeah.
we get this. We have this conversation once a week. My sales guys, the biz dev team, is having this conversation all the time, and people are like, well, I want, can you just give me the data today and I'll mail it and then I'll know next week how it's going to go. And first of all, no, and second of all, no, right,
Yeah.
that's, I can't give you the data today, especially if it's a pre-screen offer. If it's an invitation to apply, it's different. But
Yeah.
right, and then how are you going to find a mail house that can produce this thing in 2 minutes, where you don't have creative, you don't have relationships, all this stuff's going to get solved, and this is a months long process.
Yeah.
So right, stop thinking Facebook and start thinking like Sears catalogs. Right, this is how we need to think, is things are slow. And yeah.
Which is hysterical because we're working, you guys are an AI data science company. You're
Right.
moving fast. Technology is at the forefront. And you're just like, well, hold on. We almost have to slow it down, Sears catalog, to then be able to speed it up and, really see that return and that ROI. So talk about a juxtaposition. Like that
Right.
makes my brain
Yeah.
hurt.
Yeah, I absolutely see the humor in it. And I don't know, it's like, friends and family asked, when we first started this company, asked me what we were doing, and I tried to explain it, and I'm like, I don't even know how to get past the sort of ridiculous aspect of it. That is, right, we have this server room, right, we have all this technology to solve a problem about mail, right. And most your average person on the street doesn't see pieces of mail as a marketing channel. They see it as, this is a way to communicate with grandma, and this is right. And then
Yeah,
I get
the
all the
junk
junk mail,
mail
I throw it in.
era.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's coming back and there's just so much more behind it that you have to think through as, a marketing company or as someone who's looking to get into direct mail and grow revenue that way. It's like, all right, there's so many layers to this onion that you have to peel back. And if you want to really be successful, you have to have the data backing it up, or else you're kind of going in blind. Your competitors are out there using data science models. And if you're not,
Then you're
I mean,
right.
where's the match and where's my money? Because we're
Right.
lighting it on
Right.
fire to some extent.
Right.
So
And if
I do.
and if if you can't afford to build your own in-house, then the next question is, right, if you're going to use somebody else's models, it's choosing the right provider of those models. Because my company's not the only company that does this. And so it's finding one that works, that targets um, in your niche area of whatever that may be, and also has a good reputation, and can show you good results. But I mean, all of these, you said it's an onion, and it absolutely is. That's when I was writing the book, I was thinking about how deep into this, right, how many layers of this onion should I go into. And I
Yeah.
was having a conversation with the creative team, the head of creative, and asking him, hey, should I get into like printing costs around doing a 4 color print on the outer envelope versus just a black and white? Is there? And he's like, I think you might be getting like too into the weeds on this thing. And I'm like, but it's a thing, right? It's
Yeah.
years, and as you know, right, years and years in this industry, you start to think about all these little aspects of um, the cost of the package, the targeting of the package. Does the targeting match the message? Does the right? All of this sort of stuff all works together.
Yeah.
That if you haven't done direct mail, you wouldn't even know to think about. Right? You wouldn't know that that 4 color print's going to cost you another eighth of a penny, and an eighth of a penny over 1,000,000 pieces is real money.
No, it absolutely is. And I just think if you're looking out as, a printfluencer, and you're seeing these trends, I mean, what is in your crystal ball if we're looking at just the industry as a whole and direct mail as a whole? Do you have
I
anything on your radar?
I would have said like last year, 2 years ago, the big thing was QR codes, right? It
Mm.
was and that sort of came out of the pandemic. I think all of us who went
Yeah.
right learned how to interact with QR codes that had never interacted with QR codes before because all the menus were on QR codes. And so suddenly I could send a piece of mail with a QR on it and people knew how to interact with that QR. Um, One of the things that I'm seeing a lot of people talking about, and we've actually experimented a little bit with, but just in house, is an augmented reality QR, right? So, can I scan a QR and then have that QR bring up a website that interacts with a camera on my phone that provides me an overlay of information to the background, right?
Mhm.
Um, and this, I don't know if this is a solution in search of a problem, or if it's actually gonna right, but it seems to be the like the new hotness in a lot of places is having this conversation. And another one sort of parallel to this is one that we've been working on diligently in house that does have a problem that it solves, and that's QR to
Ooh,
call, right? So right now, most of your QR codes that you get in the mail, right? You scan the QR, it takes you to the website, and that's how you interact with the brand.
yeah.
And I'm saying, look, if you're really trying to drive consumers to interact with you via the phone as an inbound phone, then give them more ways than just entering in a number, right? Give them a QR to call because I can have that
Huh.
QR open the phone app on your phone. I can have it put in all the numbers, right, including a pause and a unique identifier, so that the sales
You can
agent on the
track
other
it.
end, yeah, can know exactly who you are. They can say, "Oh, it's Katelin Shanks," right?
Huh.
I have all of her information because I already had that as part of my pre-marketing
Ooh.
information together. And so now, right, you call them on the phone and there's no more telling them who you are. There's no more, can you read me the code off your mailer? There's no more any of this. It's right. That's all solved. And it removes friction from that process. And that's
Wow.
really, for us, at least in the creative land and in the technical aspects of the creative that we do, we're always trying to find a way to remove any of these sort of friction points to get the consumer to talk to our client more easily.
Yeah, I mean, because who doesn't like getting a phone call from a
Right.
prospect? I mean, your rate to close typically is so much higher if you can get
Yes.
somebody on the phone. That's been tried and true forever.
Right. Yeah. And
Um, so that's really neat.
anything you could do to drive them to the phone is useful. And this is, it's a step beyond just putting the phone number all over the piece.
Yeah, right. Screaming it at you. So I think going back because you said it and it stuck out in my mind because I work with so many, print service providers, people who are actually interacting with, the individual organizations, the marketing companies who are trying to outsource some of their print and direct mail. And you said you partner with them to bring you guys in when print just is not enough. You need the data science and the content to back it up and that hyper personalization and segmenting. And I just foresee this industry is already consolidating. Mergers and acquisitions are the soup du jour, so to speak, in this industry. And I think partnerships are right along in there because we can't all expect print service providers to go out and in-house basically build what you built.
Right.
You spent too many millions of dollars, you hired too many smart people, went through that long process of building out that company. That's just not realistic. And so I see these types of partnerships being something that can drive the print and mail industry forward in such a significant way that's not just helping, our industry grow and stay alive and, move forward, but helping these consumers and these clients who are going to them actually create campaigns that drive ROI too. So,
Yeah,
like, I think there's so much
absolutely.
opportunity.
And it works in multiple directions too. So the our data providers have access to this great data, but they don't have the performance data on direct mail campaigns to be able to build,
Yeah.
right, to be able to build these types of models in house, or they don't have the data science know-how and or staffing in house to be able to build, right, these types of models. And the same can be said of the print houses, right? So yeah, they can print, and they can bring in data. They can get bureau data, they can get other data. But again, having the expertise, having the years of experience, having all of the stuff that's required to be able to build these types of models in house is very expensive. And so a lot of like the data providers we work with will send us clients, and vice versa, because someone will call them and say, hey, I want data, I want to do a direct mail campaign, can you help me out? And they say absolutely, but what we can't do is target it for you. We don't know who to
Yeah.
mail this to. Um, and right, the same thing, the mail house gets a phone call and says, hey, we've got this creative, we want to do a direct mail campaign, can you? And they the same thing.
They're like, we don't know who to send it to, but we can print
Right.
it.
And they come to us and they say, hey, can you do, right? And we say, yeah, but we got to get the data and we got to get a mail house. So it's a 3-part process, and we all have to
Yeah.
work together.
You're really
And
like the glue bringing these two kind of siloed
right.
industries together into something that's really powerful.
Right. And so for us, it's very, we try to shepherd our clients through the whole process. We try to help them on board with the bureau or a third party data provider or wherever it is to get that solved. We work with a bunch of mail houses, and we try to find the mail house that's the right fit for that client. Is it a low volume? Is it a high volume? Are they looking for a weird package? Is it a standard off
Yeah,
the shelf? Right? Because everybody out there
it's
has a
true.
thing that they're really good at. And so, mail houses can turn your job around in a day. And
Mhm.
that's fantastic, but maybe that's at the cost of quality assurance, right? So maybe the quality looks good unless there's a problem, and then it's all garbage. Um, or maybe their quality assurance is fantastic, but they take 2 weeks with the data in order to be able to print the mail. And so it's
Yeah.
it's this
Or,
whole
I mean, even if, maybe you're targeting just people in California as your
right,
recipients of these communications, you don't
right,
want your printer to be in Maine or New England.
right,
And then we're dealing with the USPS again to get all of that mail over to the other side of the country. Like, there are all of
exactly,
these factors. Yeah. Um,
exactly.
So what if I know, your financial services, like that's your guys's bread and butter, but these types of data models are, realistic for other industries too. So say, I've got these data sets as a company and I'm like, oh, I want to be able to do something with this data that I have. I mean, can they go to you? Are you helping people build out data models?
So absolutely right. That's we right now we've got solar installers. We got one company that's doing really high end pavers. Like I
Yeah.
never even imagined this, right, in the world. I didn't think this was a thing that would ever have to deal with. But they called and they said, hey, we want to target people in these 2 states, and we want to sell high end pavers. So it's not just do they own a house, it's a wealth component, it's an income component. There's right. And so for those, what we tend to do is say, look, we've got off the shelf, like sort of a generic response propensity, the type of person who will respond to direct mail. Let's start there, right? And then
Okay.
we'll move forward. Um, and then we have people that come to us and say, hey, we did direct mail with somebody else before, and we mailed a million pieces, and we have all the data. We know who we mailed, and we know who responded. Can you help us to build a model that works for us, specifically? Absolutely, we can, right? And there's a couple ways that we approach that. One is we can build you the model and just give it to you, right? And you write me a check and I give you the model and where everybody's happy. Or I'll build you the model for nothing and then I'll host it, and then you can use us for targeting for all of the other things that we do as well, and we'll just do a discounted per piece price. Um, And we've done both of those. It depends on what their goals are as a company, to do that. But we absolutely, right. We love those challenges of solving a problem that's outside of one that we've already solved. And
Right.
this is the guy that runs a data science company, right? This is
Yeah,
this is what
exactly. You're like, all right, what's new? What can someone
right.
bring me that I haven't thought of yet? Yeah, that tracks.
Exactly. Exactly.
Let's solve something. Which
Exactly.
I think is amazing because then, yes, I mean, you're paying a premium for this type of service, but at the end of the day, you're not going out and trying to hire your own data scientists and hopefully having minimum, what, $200,000 for a yearly salary. And even knowing then if you find somebody, what to go have them do. Like, do
Right.
you just throw them your data and say, go try your best? No, like you want direction and a path forward, and that also requires expertise. So I just think being able to outsource that to companies is so valuable, especially in our, direct mail world.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that's one of the things that we go through. So, whenever we hire a new data scientist in house, is every data scientist has been out there, that solved whatever problems they've solved, and they come to us and we're like, okay, it's a very unique problem with very unique problems related to it, and there are ways to solve it and there are ways to not solve it, and usually, right, we sort of give everybody free reign for a little while, and they try to solve the problem, and then they come in, they wind up in my office saying, hey, I can't do it, I can't figure out how to solve this problem. And then we talk about the solutions that have worked over time, and they're like, this right, these aren't the things that I would have imagined that I would use in this particular problem. um
Yeah.
Great knowing that they work, because some of the newer, fancier techniques, everybody, we get a lot of questions about, do we have any neural networks,
Oh,
right, solving
yes. Hmm.
these types of problems. And it turns out that neural networks are just not great at finding these types of people, um, and or at least they haven't been great yet. They're
Yes.
great
Yeah.
for other things related to what we do. They're great at combining multiple models. They're great at other stuff, but sort of the raw prediction of response, and it is, it's very interesting. And so I imagine if I hired a data scientist and I didn't know the answers and I just let them go, I would never see a meaningful result. And I think a lot of small to mid-sized companies have had that experience, where they've said, we're going to do this, we're going to do it in house, we know what it takes, we're going to hire two data scientists and a data engineer, and we're going to solve this problem. And then a year, 18 months, 2 years later, they have no solution. And it's
Yeah.
because solving this problem takes, unfortunately, it seems to take the knowledge of having solved it before to be able to solve it again. um, because the particulars are just they're too particular.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's true. Like that experience, sometimes it's so critical to be able to solve tomorrow's problems. Um, uh, I know we're running up on time here. I think this has been such an interesting conversation, but tell everyone, where can they find your book, and maybe reiterate what type of person is best suited to go read it.
Well, obviously, everybody should read.
Yeah.
Um, so it's on Amazon. Um, you can search for my name, Brian Stacey, on Amazon. You can search for the book title, Direct Mail Targeting, a manual for financial services, and it's available as a hardcover or as an EPUB, from
Oh,
Amazon. The
good.
EPUB is cheaper, right? If you're not looking to spend a lot of money, the cost of producing a hardcover is fairly expensive, for those that
Yeah.
haven't done. I
Well,
haven't.
I mean, that's why there's so much direct to print,
Right,
one click publishing, and it's all
right.
on paperbacks, and it's because it's so much cheap. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't formatted it for paperback yet, because formatting is, anyway. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, the target audience is marketing leadership, or the executive team, and also sort of data science as well, right? And it's that intersection of those three that need to come together to make the decision to do direct mail in the first place. And I wrote the book aimed for, so that any one of those three individuals could pick this book up and get enough information to say, hey, wait a minute, this is useful or this is not useful to us. And so
Mm,
it tells the marketing professional how to present this problem to the executives, and how to present this problem to their data team. And it tells the data team how to present the problem to marketing, and right, it tells everybody sort of how to, present it to the others.
Interact with each other. Mm-hmm.
And then it gives the, the leadership team an overview of who you're going to have to hire, why, and what they need to know. It gives your data team an understanding of the different data sources, how they're structured, how you're going to have to approach that part of the problem. And it gives the marketing team the knowledge that, right, your message and the targeting are tied together. And so if you completely change your message, it's going to blow up your models because your targeting is not going to work anymore. And then how do all these people communicate, right? And I think
Right.
that's, I mean, in fact, there's like three chapters on that, on how do
Alone,
you
yes.
how do you overcome the challenges that are inherent in this type of problem, especially a very technical data driven solution to what for hundreds of years has been a very non-technical field, right? Marketing
Right.
has always been about the feeling of things, and so it's getting these three groups to communicate when they all speak a different language.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to say that I have the solution. I don't know that I have the solution. I have a framework for solving that, one that I've used multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
that has worked for me. And then, I think the smartest thing I did when writing the book was move most of the technical stuff into appendices at the end of it, so you don't have to
Yeah.
read all the technical stuff to get through, right?
Best of
Um,
both worlds. Yeah.
right.
It's basically taking like Mad Men of the past with, the absolute, nerdiest technical, data scientists and like blending them together and saying, all right, this is our world now. And you guys no
Right.
longer get to exist in your little silos. And I would also challenge, I think that I could add one more user group to your audience that should be reading this book. And those are the people who are in print and mail and actually doing the production, because this is going to be how their customers are talking internally. This is how they're going to be approaching these problems and talking about these problems. And I think if we, on the actual production side of it, don't know that, there's going
Yeah.
to just be a huge, gap just in how we communicate to these companies, how we market to those companies, and how we solve their problems as print and mailers.
Absolutely. And I'm speaking the same language, right? The whole problem of everybody speaking the same language and being able to communicate, knowing what your contacts at your clients' companies are saying and how they're
Yeah.
saying it and why they're talking that way. Because right, we interact with printers all the time. And the times that I'm on the phone call, I know that people are probably walking away with questions about what I'm talking about, and they wind up talking to my sales and business development team to say, but I have no
Translate
idea
this.
what he said. Can you translate that? Right. And over time we talk to enough people and we start to understand each other. But it would be nice. It would be nice if in that first phone call the printer knew what the technical guy was going to say and the technical guy knew
Yeah.
what the printer was going to say. Right. And
It's that's what
yeah.
we got to, and it's so funny. I mean, print and mail, this whole industry, it's all just about communications. Like we're sending communications, we're creating communications. We got to take it one step forward. And now we're back to square one. We got to start to communicate with each other, especially as the industry evolves. So
So,
it's like back to
Caitlin, are
basics.
you going to co-author my next book, the one where we get into the details about the cost of the four color print on the OE, right? Because
uh-huh.
that's stuff that my clients don't even know to ask the questions about those things because right to your point, the printers
Yes.
speak a different language than the rest of the world, right? Nobody uses French abbreviations for thousands, except the print industry, and so my clients are like, wait, well, I didn't order 1 million. This should only be 1,000. No, that's what that
You're
means.
like,
That's what that means, right? And things like OEs and indicias and right, all this stuff. They're like, I got nothing.
right. You need a whole nother education. You need a
Right.
whole education to navigate the USPS and the Postal Service in and of itself, much alone print. So, yeah, there's so much to it. And, that's why we have this podcast. We're trying to get the word out. But, yeah, I'll put a link to the Amazon page where they can find your book. And honestly, thank you so much again for just lending us your expertise on this whole world of AI and data models from God, someone who's actually done it. So thank you.
You are quite, you're quite welcome, and thank you for having me. It has been a blast.
All right. Great, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.